Cool. And hello, everyone. Nice to be here today, joining you on a very wet and windy day down in Victoria, which is nice to get some soft, gentle rainfall over the weekend. For those of you who are down south, I can see some familiar names in the attendee list. So g'day to those of you that I know, and for those of you that I don't, I'm Don Walker. I'm an advisor and a coach with RCS Australia, and we work across this whole country, really working with farming families and farming businesses in a holistic way. And so the core product that we have as part of this partnership with AgriWebb is the Farming and Grazing for Profit School, or the Grazing for Profit School if you're in the north. And we've been very happy to celebrate 40 years of teaching this course in Australia this year. So a fair stint influencing producers across the Australian landscape. And I guess the bulk of what we do is support producers to profitably leave their country in a better condition than they found it. And so all of you thinking about, your legacy as land managers and land stewards, I'm sure you all have a goal that is to leave your country in a better condition than you found it. But the key word there is profitability. So how do we profitably do that? And our course really unpacks over 7 days how we can achieve that in a holistic way. And that's what we do at RCS, and we also do a lot of one-on-one coaching and advisory work. So we work with people to first set their vision and goals, and then achieve them. So that's me, and I'm excited to be here.
Perfect. Thanks, Dom. I'll jump in. My name's Isabel. I'm the product marketing manager here at AgriWebb. So I've been here for a couple of years now. I started out in implementation, so I was lucky enough to train a lot of our new customers how to use AgriWebb. So in a second, I'll jump through and give a really high-level overview of what AgriWebb is. But just a quick background on myself. I grew up on a farm around Tassie, and now I'm up in Victoria as well. So been on farms around Victoria, and now I'm based in Melbourne as well. So it's nice to see quite a bit of rain over the weekend. So I've been helping farmers use data to make better decisions with software for the past almost 5 years now across different companies. So I'm very excited today to chat with Dom. This was an idea I had because I was pretty curious about what it's like to work with an advisor and understand sort of the different decisions and questions that you might be going through during a good season, and unfortunately for some of us still in a bad season down here in Victoria, but fingers crossed this rain keeps coming. So yeah, looking forward to jumping in.
Wonderful. Keep those slides rolling there.
Yeah.
Rachel, did you want to talk a bit to AgriWebb
I'll go
there?
into AgriWebb, and apologies if anyone can hear my dog in the background. He's decided to sit outside the window. So here at AgriWebb, what we're all about is equipping farmers to be more efficient and profitable and sustainable. So this starts with easy, holistic on-farm data collection. So we're well known for our mobile app with our farm map. And so we cover data collection from livestock management, your weights, your fertility to your livestock numbers, and then your grazing management. So, for quite a few years, that was just stocking rates and cropping. But with RCS, we've delved into more of the grazing planning and rotational management, which has been really exciting. And then obviously more around your farm and business management. So your expenses, cost of production, and workforce management, just to make sure you and all your team are on the same page. So that's very high level. If you want to learn more about AgriWebb, there'll be resources in the email afterwards to learn more. But my sort of role in this webinar will be tying what Dom is talking about to how you can find that data in AgriWebb to help you make decisions as well. Thanks, Rach.
Well, I can talk to this RCS pathway. So the fundamental basis for everything we do is this three-legged pot on the right-hand side there, and the three-legged pot is is really a metaphor for holistic thinking, because our land, our production, and our business supports us, the people. And this guides everything that we do at RCS, and it guides the way that we think about unpacking an agribusiness when we're working with clients, because we're managing complex and adaptive ecosystems, so we need a complex and adaptive management system to work with. And so on the land leg, we want to be thinking about how can we improve soil health, and soil health underpins improving our carrying capacity, because we're improving the water holding capacity. So every drop of rainfall that we get, how efficiently are we converting that into green grass? And the next thing there, the next leg is the production leg. So we're we're all concerned with production in this business, but we really want to be focused on running enterprises that have the maximal gross margin per DSE, or LSU if you're joining us from Queensland. And those enterprises need to suit us and our landscapes. And then with the business leg, Rach, if you can just go back one slide there, with the business leg, we want to be thinking about optimal overheads. So what are the optimal overheads for this business? And I say optimal because it's not about starving profit into a business, but it is really about managing the relationship between our overheads and our production. And managing our cost of production is a huge part of running an effective livestock business. And then we also want to be thinking about our business structure, so interest rates and how we're navigating those conversations with key stakeholders in our business, like our bank manager. And so when we work with people, you can start by getting knowledge, and that's the bottom of this pathway, is getting yourself some knowledge. So go and do some training, some professional development. But then the next step is really developing your skills. So it's really nice to learn things, and we all love learning, but you need to actually put these things into practice, and that's where the coaching and advice comes in. And then Executive Link is our program where a peer group form a board, an advisory board, and that's like having 5 other businesses as key stakeholders in your business and helping you make the best decisions possible. Really powerful program, Executive Link. So that's what we do, and everything that we do is driven by principles. So, Rach, if you just go to that next slide there. These are the 6 grazing principles that we work with, and that have really guided our work with AgriWebb in terms of setting up that grazing planner and taking the grazing management to the next level with this software. So it's really exciting what AgriWebb are doing in this space, and we're very happy to be partnered with them. But what you can start to do if you're using AgriWebb is come up with a plan. And it's super important. When we do anything in life, we need to come up with a plan. But it's not just the plan, it's not just what we write down, it's actually the process of planning that's important. And a really key step in that is monitoring what we've planned. So as your season changes and evolves, you need to be monitoring and adapting to what's going on. Right now, down south, we've just had a lovely weekend of soft rainfall across most of the Western districts. So between 20 and 30 mil with a lot of clients, and so we start to think about, well, what's that going to do to our fodder production? The next principle is rest. Plants need rest, and so we need to adjust our grazing to give those plants rest. So how do we do that? The next principle is we need to match our stocking rate to carrying capacity. And this is fundamental and a really key part of where I see this partnership working well, is when I can roll up to a farm and people have a really clear picture of their stocking rate, because they've got all their data up to date in AgriWebb. It's just wonderful. It makes life easy. And then we want to be managing stock effectively. So that's animal nutrition, timing of reproduction, and low stress stock handling, and optimizing stock density and managing for biodiversity. So those principles are how we work. It's not a recipe, but it's a set of principles that can guide your thinking for designing a grazing business. But we might roll into some questions. Otherwise, I'll just talk to this screen all day. I can just rabbit and rabbit and rabbit.
Yes, I know why there's a 7-day RCS course, that's for sure. I was lucky enough to attend one. But we've been working with RCS sort of unofficially for a while, but last year we kicked off our partnership. And so we were lucky enough to work with the RCS team to develop some really powerful grazing features in our rotational planner and grazing chart, which we've seen a number of customers start to utilize over the last year with great success. So we really were utilizing those grazing principles to make it easier for people to implement what they're learning at the Grazing for Profit courses and make sure that they can easily answer whether the grazing management changes they've been making have been paying off for them, as well as giving just really powerful data and insights on your grazing to make better decisions, which is what we're going to get into now. So our first scenario is making decisions during dry conditions. We obviously, Dom and I are both from Victoria, so we're often driving around the countryside and seeing what it looks like. So we just wanted to sort of give some advice to farmers that are currently experiencing dry conditions, but unfortunately, everyone, I think every farmer in Australia will experience those conditions at some point during their farming career. So hopefully this advice is relevant for everyone. So first off, Dom, I just wanted to understand about managing constraints during a dry season. So what kind of simple decisions we can make that will relieve pressure from depleted feed, limited water, or high overheads that often come with these types of seasons.
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. Well, it's a big topic, and we spend a couple of days talking about dry times in the Grazing for Profit school and developing systems for producers to use when we come up against these dry times. And as you know, the Australian landscape is very variable, so it's a inevitability, not a probability. And I think I'd just like to say and acknowledge that in the south, where we've had a number of seasons kind of compound on one another, we really need to start looking after our mindset and our mental health. And so building connection, building community, and building a support network is what I would say would be the first step to putting yourself in a good frame of mind to make sound business decisions. So reach out to your networks and get some support. And there's some wonderful support out there at the moment in Victoria through AgVic if you're down here. But every region and network has a wonderful network of support available to primary producers. So just sing out to your networks when you need a yarn or need to talk things through. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment down here. So the first thing we need is full visibility of the scenario. So we need to understand what's going on in your business before we can really start to make any decisions. But probably the first thing that I'd want to know, Isabel, is how much grass have you got? Grass creates options. That's what we always say. So if you've got grass, you've got options. And right now down here, we've probably got 3 to 6 weeks where we can still grow a bulk of feed, and maybe that's a little bit longer if you're down in Tassie. I saw some folks down in Tassie online. So we've got this window where we can still grow a bulk of feed, and people might have summer crops in or be thinking about summer crops, so perhaps that extends that window a little bit. But whatever we do, we need to have a feed budget, and so that would be my number one first step. Is we need a feed budget. We need to understand how much grass have you got. So that'll be my first question: how much grass have you got? How much do you need? So that's really a question about stocking rate. So what is our stocking rate going to look like over the next 3 to 6 months? Do we have animals that are lactating? Do we have animals that are going to be joined and need to be in a certain body condition for that joining? And or do we have finishing stock that we're hoping to turn off, or are we doing a trade that we need to complete? So we need to calculate how much feed we need. And then the final question is, when do we need to have this conversation again? So it's really, they're the 3 questions that I would ask when we're thinking about constraints. But I think when you're thinking about options, it's really about what levers we have to pull to reduce stocking rate. If you're thinking about this dry season and a constrained conditions, what are our options to reduce stocking rate? So that might be marketing of our young stock, but it also might be early weaning. I think that's probably one of the most underutilized tools that we have at our disposal to rapidly reduce the stocking rate on our place. And so I would be thinking about that, but just getting a really clear picture of what that marketing program of our young stock is going to look like and what that stocking rate is going to look like as we flow through the season. If water is going to be a constraint, so if we don't have water, well, then we need to be thinking really seriously about whether we can run animals. Because if you don't have stock water, then our options become very limited, as you know, Isabel. I'm yet to see a situation where carting water is profitable. So that's the unfortunate reality of what we're dealing with. But I encourage people to seek the support that they need to make those decisions.
Perfect. If we just step back a bit, I have a question from Claire. This is very relevant to, grass equaling options, and we need to feed budget. She was wondering, how can we get accuracy with pasture assessments when there are 2 or 3 people recording this?
Oh, great question, Claire. So how do we get accuracy if we're working in a team? So it comes back to building a system that everyone in that team is comfortable with. And we use DSE days per hectare as the measure of feed available. And the best way to build that team capability is to go out and do it together. Now, this is going to take, it's like anything, right? It's going to take an initial investment. So there will be an initial investment of time. But what you will find is that once everyone is on the same page, you have a system that everyone can work with. So I would suggest that you create a calendar where you go out on 2 to 3 occasions and do it together. So you actually go out and physically do that feed estimation exercise together. And that involves, walking out your squares. If you're managing in dry matters, kilos of dry matter per hectare, well, then you can go and do that together too. But it's really about building this shared capacity and getting on the same page. So that would be step one. The second step is it's like anything with management. There has to be a level of trust, but there also has to be a level of verification. So when we're managing teams, it's important that we build trust and we build capacity, but you still need to go out and verify. And so I would say if you're running a grazing business, having an accurate feed budget is probably the single most valuable thing to your business at any one point in time. So it's a core competency that we need to build, and it's also one that as managers or CEOs of our grazing business, we need to go and check that it's being done accurately.
Perfect. And Claire had another question just going on from that is updating their DSE rating monthly going to give them enough accuracy on paddock yields? So I guess a bit more around the frequency of recording that data.
Is updating DSE rating monthly going to give me enough accuracy on paddock yields? Yeah, I think by and large it will. I think if you wanted to get really dialed in, you could integrate something like an OptiWave for your growing stock, which is going to give you an accurate daily gain, which will give you a more accurate picture of how much feed is actually being consumed. But I think if you can get into the habit of doing this monthly, so updating your DSE ratings monthly, that you'll be in a really, really good position. I think what I see is people fall into the trap of forgetting to do it 1 month, and then suddenly it's 2 or 3 months before anything's been updated, and it becomes quite the chore. So little and often would be my recommendation for that, to just keep on top of it.
Perfect. And for those that are using AgriWebb, either on our mob or individual animal product, you have your separate DSE record. But with both of them now, you can actually choose, instead of doing your DSE by age class, you can allow it to auto update your DSE based on weights. So if you're seeing your animals quite often and you're weighing them quite often, every time you do that weight record, it's going to update your DSE for you automatically based on that weight. So you can change that in your farm settings, and that can just sort of make it a little easier. For those also who are just running our mob product, when you're doing your drag and drop paddock moves, you'll see sometimes there's a little next button as you do the move, and in there you can update the DSE, I believe, on your animals as you're sort of moving them around. So it becomes a bit more of a workflow that you and your team can pick up, day to day as you're doing your other records on AgriWebb as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic little option to add in there. My one caveat would be that nothing beats walking in the paddock. There is no skill that will beat being a good observer of country. And so we just need to get in the habit. And if that means that you need to put it in the calendar that you go for a paddock walk, well, put it in the calendar.
Yeah, put it in your AgriWebb calendar. I'll say you guys are going to get sick of me. I'll bring it back to AgriWebb every time. And I guess my only little addition to Claire's first question around your team, obviously, you can have as many users on AgriWebb as you want. But you can also see who is doing different records. So if you're finding someone, maybe is a little bit inaccurate with their pasture assessments, you can identify who that is and maybe take them on a few more paddock walks or send them to a grazing for profit school as well.
I think you had a comment in there about managing high overheads. Was that
Yeah,
part of the question?
I was going to move on to that, and especially around supplementary feeding as well. I'm interested to hear how you sort of plan for that during a dry time.
Yeah, great question. I'll just touch on overheads, which make up a big part of our cost of production. And so, you know, managing cost of production is, I'd say there's two big levers that we have as managers to manage risk in our agribusiness. And the first is, how do we manage weather risk? And I've talked to that. So we need a feed budget. We need to understand how much grass we've actually got and how we're matching stocking rate to carrying capacity. The second is managing cost of production. And so what we found benchmarking businesses over 35 years is that those businesses who consistently have a low cost of production are the ones that are consistently profitable or have a higher return on assets. And the overheads piece is a big part of this. So what we've seen is a lot of overheads creep in the past probably 5 years, and particularly after that 22, 23 cattle market boom, there was a lot of overheads creep that crept into businesses. And so those are things like insurance has gone up quite a lot, labor's gone up quite a lot, and so it's really about having visibility and having the finger on the pulse of your business. And what we need to do is a full business analysis with management accounting, and so that's a big part of what RCS is all about is management accounting, so that we can have a clear picture of what our overheads actually are. But it's not just high overheads, right? It's about the right relationship of overheads to our production. And so we're focused on the relationship. And I said at the top, we don't want to starve profit into a business, but we do need to have the right relationship of overheads to our production or our turnover. And so after benchmarking businesses for 35 years in our Profit Probe program, what we've seen is that those businesses with overheads that are less than 35% of our gross production or turnover are those that are consistently profitable. And so that's saying that for every dollar of production, we want to be spending less than 35 cents on our overheads. So this is something that we need to get really clear on and understand, well, what do overheads actually look like in our business? What are the things that are driving them up? You've got two options. One is you can reduce them, or two is you can dilute them. And so how do we improve that relationship? Well, we can produce more for the overheads that we're spending. So that's really how we begin to unpack overheads in an agribusiness. You mentioned supplementary feeding. We would call that a direct cost. And so the supplementary feeding, a direct, or is often referred to as a variable cost, is related to the number of animals that we've got. And we must be profitable when we're doing this. And so the key that I would say there is, if we are supplementary feeding, we want to get really clear on what those costs look like in our business. And I'm going to pick on fodder conservation here just for a second, just because it's fun. But it is an area where we see a lot of cost creep. And so the hidden costs of depreciation on plant and the hidden costs of labour are two things that really creep into fodder conservation in a grazing business. And so we just need to be really clear on, if we're going to cut hay and conserve that feed, is that going to be a profitable decision for our business moving forward? Does that go to what you were asking?
Yeah, and
You
I
might
think
just need to steer me sometimes. I can get
no, that's
sidetracked.
okay. I was definitely wondering with the overheads, for those maybe that are just sort of newer in their analysis of their business.
Yeah.
Obviously, in AgriWebb, you can record your cost of production and your gross margin. Where would you start at a basic level to sort of get that information?
All your overheads, the basic information is going to be in your P&L, so you can go and find. But what we want to do is actually categorize these costs into the four key areas. The way we look at it is admin, plant and equipment, land and labour. And land and labour are probably the two areas that we've seen a lot of increase over the past 5 years. So your land, it might be your land inputs. So that's things like pasture innovation and fertilizer. And your labour might just be really the cost of labour and how that's gone up. So if our labour is going up, then we need to improve our labour efficiency. So when we work with someone, we go and tally up all these costs and get them categorized into the right place. That's the key thing.
Perfect. And with the supplementary feeding, do you usually set a sort of an endpoint, like of when you choose, like, yes, I'm going to supplementary feed up until this point, and then maybe I'll destock, or how are you making those kind of decisions? I guess preferably like earlier in a season, so then when you're in the thick of it and you're tired and you're feeding stock and maybe dealing with a lot, mentally, that you can say, like, I'm in my no-go zone. What's my next option?
Yeah, great point. The short answer is yes. We need to be clear about what the profitability of our supplementary feeding is. So we're focused on, when we're supplementary feeding, we're really focused on supplementing the fodder that we've already grown. We don't want to fall into the trap of substitute feeding. So you want to have a plan, and you need to have a budget, and you need to have an end date. Those are the three key points there. The trap that we often see, or we often find, is that there's no end date, and so you end up chasing feed, and it's a dangerous place to be in, both mentally and physically, to get yourself into that situation. So I think the key things is exactly what you touched on. We need to have a plan, and so how does our supplementary feeding fit into our overall strategy? Is it a key part of our overall strategy? What other options are there? Is there a way that we could run our business with a lot less or even zero supplementary feed? And that's what often where we get to when we start digging into these businesses. The next bit there is it must be profitable. So we must be for every dollar that we invest, we need to be getting 3 back, or that gross margin ratio to be in a good, healthy position. So that's how I would think about it. And then, having an end date. So what are the critical dates for you in thinking about your calendar? If you know that you're going to be supplementary feeding, you need to know when it's going to end, or what you're going to do so that it can end.
Perfect. And I'm sort of picking up on a bit of a theme here, and hopefully for those that are on that already utilize AgriWebb, it's that you're as informed as you can be with the information you have. So it's best to start gathering and recording data as soon as you can. The old saying, the best day was yesterday, if not today.
Yeah.
Do you think that is really important for your customers, is to making sure they're using something like AgriWebb where they're recording data, in a normal year or a good year, so that then they have that sort of informed knowledge of what does it look like to operate in a dry year based on my baseline?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think at a very basic level, you need to understand what your stocking rate is at any given point in a season. And so you would have your base scenario. Let's say you're a breeding operation. You've got a base scenario for, based on average rainfall, how many breeders can I run? And so everything that we do at RCS is we make these decisions based on how much rainfall we've actually received. And so what we encourage people to do is to convert their carrying capacity into a number that is relevant to the rainfall that they receive. So that would be the DSE days per hectare per 100 mils. And then you can judge your stocking rate using the same formula or the same calculation. And so those two bits of information are absolutely vital. You really need to know how is your stocking rate trending compared to your carrying capacity. If you can match stocking rate to carrying capacity in your grazing business, you're going to be in a really, really profitable spot. And to link to AgriWebb, I think having good data is vital. It's sort of like any of these data systems. It's garbage in, garbage out. So you want to make sure that at the very least, most clients that I'm working with are using the mob data, so that at the very least you've got your DSE ratings up to date. That'd be the key thing for me. Mobs and DSE ratings up to date.
Perfect. And for those that are currently using AgriWebb, I definitely recommend, if you're not already, to start checking out your livestock reconciliation reports. That'll give you sort of your opening and closing numbers, and then your load by paddock report. So if you're working in a DSE, your DSE load by paddock, you can start to see how you're performing over a normal year, or your LSU load by paddock report. And then if you're using our grazing planning add-on, you also have your grazing chart as well. Moving on to the second, or not the second scenario, the sort of second part of the during dry conditions, we wanted to zoom in, as you mentioned, onto sort of breeding operations. So it's getting to the time of year, people are going to be thinking about joining. So how can producers maintain performance in their breeding stock, and what are those sort of early intervention points that people should be watching out for before conditions worsen?
Running an effective breeding operation to me is really about thinking long term. And so, you asked about early intervention points. I think everything that we've covered so far is the early intervention point. But if you think about well, what is the key driver of fertility in a cow or in a ewe, it's at the point of joining. It's going to be her body condition. And so we need to be managing for our breeding animals to have a body condition score of 3 and above at the point of joining. So if you've, let's say I'm heading out to some clients this afternoon, so we'll use their scenario. They're just about to put bulls out and they'll be aiming to be calving late July, early August, bulk of calves on the ground early August. And so the goal there is that you've lined up the timing of your breeding with the timing of you're matching it to the timing of your available forage. And so if you think about those calves hitting the ground in early August, late July, early August, what we want to be doing is matching that demand, the peak lactation, so about 6 weeks later, with supply, so peak fodder production, which will be in that country sort of late August, early September. So all we're doing is we're just trying to match the available feed to the peak demand. That'd be the biggest number one driver, to put ourselves in control. And so we want to be managing for those animals to be in that optimal body condition at the point of joining. What else can we do to achieve that? I mentioned early weaning before, and I think it bears mentioning again, because it's a really, really cool tool that we can use to manage the body condition of our breeding animals. And with markets the way they are at the moment, it probably also creates opportunities for fattening the young stock or feeding the young stock profitably. With the asterisks, you've got to do a gross margin on that before you jump into it. Just going to keep hammering this gross margin thing, but yeah, there's really little point putting feed into animals for no return.
Perfect. And I'm going to hammer on again about AgriWebb, but that's my job. For those of you, obviously you can, when you're popping in your feed inventory, you want to be making sure you're adding in the your purchase price, or if you're paying for supplementary feed, or you can also add in sort of costs on your harvest record if you're in AgriWebb harvesting your hay or silage and then storing that in your inventory to feed out. And I would highly recommend for those of you that do supplementary feed is to use our relatively new feature, which is the feed planner. And so you can set up those feeds into the future and people just have to go in and mark them as done. So then you're starting to get those really accurate costs. So then if you haven't done that previously, you can do it during this dry time. And if a below average season comes around again, you're equipped to say, how much did it cost me this year? When did I stop? When did I start? As well. So those two, the your feed inventory and then your feed planner, are really good tools to use during those kind of seasons. Another sort of more breeding performance one is obviously people often talk about like overperformers and underperformers and identifying animals if you do need to pull those levers to change your stocking rate. Again, making sure you're recording your fertility data like your preg scan records and your marking records, because we will, give you your marking and pregnancy percentages, and you can look at that through a few different fertility reports in AgriWebb, and so you can sort of identify, who are my bottom performers, and once I hit one of those, intervention points, I might be able to identify them and move them off as an intervention as well. But that's probably definitely stock standard advice for dry conditions is finding your low performers, which I'm surprised you didn't bring up, Dom. But it was
Yeah,
nice to see
well,
something different.
no, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. So I think, the key thing is having the visibility on what those, let's say you've got an A, B, and C herd. What are the animals there that would be the first to fall out of your program if you did need to pull that lever? And so really, really good point. And often something that we'll talk about is ensuring that before you get yourself in the situation where you're having to make these decisions, you get really clear on which animals are which, so that we're
Yeah,
not making emotional decisions about sacred cows.
perfect.
Because I know that's a
Awesome.
trap that I would fall into.
Yeah, never name them. Never name them. All right,
Um,
we better keep moving on, otherwise
we've
we'll
just
be
got a
here
few
for
questions here,
a few
Isabel.
hours. Yes.
Did you want to
Um,
jump into those?
I think I'll leave them to the end.
Okay,
I want to I think we can go over maybe just ones of the scenarios for the better conditions, just looking at the time.
sure.
So for those in the country that are currently, have more of a favorable season, and fingers crossed that'll be the rest of us soon. So when multiple paddocks are at peak growth, how do producers decide which areas to rest versus graze to protect long-term productivity?
Oh, yeah. Okay, this was a good one. I would bring it back to the principles first and foremost. So, principle number one is plan, monitor, and manage. Do you have a plan? Are you monitoring it? And are you managing for the changes? If you're doing that, then proceed to principle number two, which is, are plants getting rest? So, are the plants that we're grazing fully recovered when we come to graze them again? And then is stocking rate matched to carrying capacity? And in a season where you've got more feed than usual, well, maybe there's an opportunity to match stocking rate to carrying capacity by bringing more mouths on. So that would be the first three things. If you're doing these things well, we're in a really, really good position, great foundation to start from. With regards to the grazing decision, you just have to make a decision effectively because you can't be everywhere at once. So we're always balancing, we're balancing these three legs of the pot at any one time. And I think in spring in particular, or in your growing season in particular, we're managing for the landscape, but we're also managing for animal production. Like that's when we make money. That's when we put kgs on. And so the best way to do that, I think, is with a faster rotation. And so when you've got fast growth, you want fast moves. So those animals will be moving through paddocks quickly so that we can come back to those paddocks that we've already grazed more quickly. And what they'll do is they'll also be taking the eyes out of the feed, or they'll be taking the ice cream out of the feed, and really going forward at a rapid rate. You can't be everywhere though, so there will be those paddocks that get away, and I just wouldn't worry about it. I would consider that standing hay for a future day. And look, that might not be appropriate for every single person on this call's context. You know, there's certain contextual things like frost or mold or whatever it is that can knock out your standing feed. So we just need to think through those scenarios. But I would say by and large, um, optimizing your grazing in one area and allowing another area to get some recovery and get some rest is a really good way to go about it.
Perfect. I'm going to throw a little question out there that I haven't asked you about before, but I
Okay.
guess many people probably think, it's a good season. Why would I need to engage with an advisor, or what kind of advice should I be getting in this kind of season? Maybe I want to continue on. Really quickly, what would be like your number one reason why you would engage with an advisor during more of a favorable season?
Great question. I think for me, it comes back to human psychology. And so when we are under pressure, when we're under stress, we're not very good at thinking long term. We're in that fight or flight mode, and our systems tend to be quite shut down, and we don't have a great ability to open our peripheral vision and do things like long term planning. In a good season, where things are going well, the market's going with us, we've got profit in our business, we've got money to reinvest. That's absolutely when I would think about engaging an advisor. That's the best time to sit down and do that strategic work because one, you're in the headspace to do it. Two, you've got the funds to do it. Um, and yeah, you've just got a much greater capacity for that long-term thinking. Saying that though, I think, a lot of the work that we do, we tend to work with people long term, and so it's not just a one and done. We prefer a relationship where we're actually sticking with that business over the journey so that we can see that change take place. That's what I think drives every single one of us at RCS is really that long-term change.
Perfect. Great answer. Well, if you're happy to move on, we've got quite a few questions if you want
Oh,
to get
good.
into those. I'm going to start with Adrian's in the chat because I'm very interested in your answer for this one. So, how do you factor in previous grazing when looking at pasture assessment? If you've overgrazed, for example, how does that factor into the calculation?
Yeah, great question. Great question. When we're recording our grazing data, if you're using a grazing chart, it is really important that you measure the severity of that previous graze. So the way that I do it in my grazing business is just with the paper grazing chart. Sorry, Isabel. Um,
I'll pretend I didn't hear that. We'll cut it out post.
Yeah. And I would always record the severity of that graze. And so is it a light, medium, or heavy graze? And the trick is that we want to match up the recovery that we're giving that paddock with the severity of that graze. And so what you want to avoid doing is coming back to a severely grazed paddock too soon. And I guess you would adjust that feed on offer number based on how much grass you really want to take out of it. So it always is about balancing, well, how much do I actually want to take? I'm not going to graze it all. I want to leave some in reserve. I want to leave some to feed biology. I want to leave some to capture rainfall, some as ground cover. So I would adjust that number based on that. I hope that answers your question, Adrian.
Perfect. I'll move on to the next one from Angus. So, can SIBO data be used to feed budget? And could it be possible to calculate DSE days and overlay it with AgriWebb stock numbers to give an estimated DSE days remaining on farm? So, for those of you that don't know, we also partner with SIBO Labs. So they will, through an integration, they send us the total standing dry matter into your AgriWebb, and we work out in kilos of dry matter how much feed on offer you have available. So we do have quite a number of customers who maybe don't use the RCS principles who utilize that to feed budget in sort of grazing days over those sort of DSE days. But I'm interested, I'm not as good at the calculating DSE days, Dom. It's a bit too much maths for me. But do you have like farmers down south that maybe are using the kilos of dry matter per hectare to then use that with their DSE days, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just answer Gus's question quickly. G'day, Gus. Yeah, the SIBO data can be used as part of a feed budget. I think it needs to be ground truthed in the paddock. So I would say that it's a really good tool, but it needs to be checked. And so what I would do is, if you want to integrate that into your feed budgeting pattern or system, then you would generate the estimate with the Chibo Labs data, but then go and check it in the paddock. So how realistic is this based on what we're seeing on the ground? Because a satellite can't pick up much information about quality as well, and so we really need to be thinking about quantity and quality. Then yes, you could be making an estimate for growth using the farming forecaster data. But what I would say is that we're really concerned with the feed budget, or the total available feed left over, when we're in our non-growing period. And so it's when in your context, mate, stuff would start haying off, and that might be late November, let's say, early December. Those hot north winds come and start blowing. That's the point in time where you really want to go and calculate how much feed we've got left, carry us through to the next time when we're going to grow it. So that's how I would think about it. For me, DSE days is just a really simple. I know there's a little bit of maths involved, but it's really about just adding up the number of DSE on your place and timesing it by the number of days. That's how I'd go about it. But yeah, you can bring in these different tools. They're all really good for forming part of your, I guess, grass management dashboard, for want of a better word. But you need to be ground truthing them.
Perfect. And I'll just quickly answer Adrian's follow-up question on the SIBO lab. So I'm just probably going to give Rachel a heart attack and quickly share my screen. Hopefully I don't mess it up for her. That this is our one of our demo farms on AgriWebb that's connected to SIBO. So it's through an integration. So I have my farm map, and then I can look at a per paddock level every 5 days, as long as they get a good reading. So that depends on sort of cloud cover. They'll send us the total standing dry matter. So on the 18th of October, I got 1,100 kilos of dry matter. And then if I want to, I can put in a bit of a utilization percentage. So maybe part of that paddock is inaccessible and it will hay off or something. So I can say how much is being utilized by the animals. On all your paddocks in AgriWebb, you'll then have your target residual. So that's how much you want to leave over in the paddock. So then we take the feed on offer, and that gives you the available feed on offer for that paddock. So I can see here that's 396 kilos of dry matter per hectare. And for paddocks with animals in it, if I can find it, it will give you days remaining for how long you can graze that, based on the stocking load of the animals. So obviously this is demo data, so it's a bit funny, but you can see how long you've been grazing for the paddock for, and how long you have left to go. And then another powerful tool, just quickly, is obviously, because that data is automatic, and I agree, definitely need to go out and ground truth everything. We can sort of give you a feed on offer map. So this can really help with that sort of planning. Mm-hmm. You can see, where are the paddocks with lots of feed on offer, and maybe I haven't grazed up this section of the farm yet. I could maybe utilize that in my rotations as well. So feel free to reach out if you're an AgriWebb customer to our support team, if you want some more info, or if you're not, to our sales team, and they can take you through it as well. Thanks, Adrian. There's a few more questions. We'll keep rolling through if people have to jump off.
They're all
feel
for you,
free.
Isabel. They want to
They
know
are.
about this DSE days per hectare per 100 mils. So thanks, Tim, and
I'm
thanks,
sure.
Kate.
Yeah, I'm
Don't worry, we've
sure.
been banging that drum.
What a great question for me. Yes, so we have a number of questions. I'm just going to pop them all in the Q&A so everyone can see them from a few people. So I am going to be really annoying and say I actually can't really answer that question. Obviously, we have different working on different things all the time in the product team. They're definitely on our radar, and we're definitely taking into account all the feedback we're getting from customers, and we do really appreciate it of how important that part of the RCS principles are in using your DSE days per hectare per 100 mils of rainfall, and we're really happy that you want to see that in AgriWebb. Um, Definitely, I can understand it. It's been a while that people have been waiting for that, but it's definitely on our radar, and hopefully we will start working on it soon as well. And that's the same for the sort of stocking rate and carrying capacity. We obviously have some really great features already that you can sort of see your stocking rate in a number of reports, but you do have to take that potentially out of AgriWebb and work out your carrying capacity outside of AgriWebb. So yeah, thank you to everyone for your feedback, and I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer than that, unfortunately.
That's
Um,
okay, Isabel. We know you're working on it, and
yeah,
we also know that if you wanted to come and do some training on how to do that, there's spreadsheets that come with the
yes,
grazing clinic or the grazing for profit
yeah,
school if people are interested in coming and learning how to do that outside of the AgriWebb platform,
yeah,
up until the point until it's developed, which I'm sure it will be. I'll just quickly
exactly.
ask Bree's question there. How do you
Yeah,
calculate BCS for cows and heifers prior to joining, Bree? It's a visual assessment that you can do in the paddock, or you could do it in the yards if you want to get really technical. Angus Australia have a really good little, I think it's a 5-page PDF. I would go and print that one out and just practice getting your eye in. It's really about being able to visually assess. It's the hips and pin bones as well as ribs um, and I guess spinal protrusion there on the back of your cow. So it's about getting your eye in as much as anything. You can do it in the crush if you want to get a vet out to actually go and be very specific, but I don't think that's necessary um, in most
perfect.
cases.
Awesome. Well, I think we have one more question. Otherwise, feel free to drop any others in. Otherwise, we'll let everyone get back to their day. But Adrian did ask, can we go into details on how to accurately calculate stocking rates and DSE days? And, Dom, I wouldn't be opposed if you said go to a grazing for profit course as the answer.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into my final plug
It
for
is.
the Grazing for
Look at us
Profit
go.
School down in Townsville, up in Townsville, or down in Bendigo in November and February. We go into how to do this in great detail, Adrian. So it's a simple process. We add up all your animals, we give them all a DSE rating, and then we add that all up. And the DSE days is we just times it by the number of days. So it sounds complicated. Once you get your head around it, it's a really, really powerful tool, but it takes a bit of getting used to it, a bit of learning a language, and like learning anything new, it takes a bit of practice.
Perfect. Yes. And so for those that are current AgriWebb customers, you do receive a discount on the grazing and farming for profit courses as well. I was lucky enough to attend a couple of days in Townsville last year, and I mean, I'm not on a farm at the moment, and maths is not my strong suit, but I definitely learnt a lot, and I would highly recommend checking them out as well. You might even see Good Charlotte down in Bendigo in Feb next year. Perfect.
I think one thing that people can consider as they leave is professional development, and we have a few rules of thumb at RCS, but one rule of thumb that I like to think about is, if you're spending 1% of your gross revenue on professional development per year, I think that's a really good basis to work from. And so you need to be reinvesting in yourself. There's a great quote by Benjamin Franklin, which is that knowledge pays the best interest. So go and invest in yourself, whether it's with us or with someone else. Just keep doing that training, keep building that curiosity, and keep building those muscles.
I agree. And yeah, just to wrap up, as I said at the start, I was curious on what it's like to work with an advisor. So I wanted to, bring that to our customers and our RCS customers to see what it's like. And hopefully that is helpful. And to those that maybe are going through a dry time, obviously you might have got some advice that would help you out, but I can't reiterate what Dom said at the start enough, is that please reach out to any of us if you're struggling. There are some great resources, and hopefully it continues raining, and we will be looking at more favourable conditions from now on.
Sounds good to me.
Perfect. Thanks for your
Thanks so
time, Dom.
Yeah,
I
thanks so much
appreciate
for
it. It
having
was a
me
great
today.
question, great chat, and good luck with the travel. And yeah, we'll see how we go.
Thank you all. I'll see the familiar faces around, and for those of you that I haven't met, I hope to catch you one day.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.